All right, everybody. Welcome to the Essential Credentials Podcast, episode 29. Happy Saturday. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their weekend, de-stressing a little bit. And to help us do that and help you do that, I brought along a couple of Mariner friends. First off, I brought Brent. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? Good to see you.
Always at the bottom?
And Brent, also known as NearMintMusing on YouTube, NearMintMusings. And I also brought a return guest and one that's a little more relaxed, hopefully, now that things have, got better. He doesn't have to run off screen in the middle of the episode. Poor guy. That is Ryan. How you doing, buddy?
What did you have to?
I'm doing all right. I am not bleeding, and my lungs not collapsing. I'm good.
That's great, man. You were a trooper for hanging in there last episode, man. That was awesome. And he's also known as MarinerCollector. And if you want somebody to read you part of a book and then go into showing cards and somehow tie it together, that is the guy you need to go watch. So he will be a lot of fun for you to check out after this episode. But we thought we would talk about a couple of different topics. First of all, Brent is kind of going through the same path and process that I went through 4 years ago and kind of discovering the 90s for the first time, or rediscovering them in a way. And so we're going to talk to him a little bit about that whole journey so far, especially because Ryan is different from Brent and I. And Ryan is someone who's been collecting and hasn't really stopped since Griffey came onto the scene. And so it'll be really fun to hear his perspective on it. And after we get done talking about that, we're going to jump right into just some of our favorite Mariner stories and go through the history of the team a little bit and how, some of the cards that we've picked up throughout the years and how those tie in. And then maybe talk about current Mariners if we can stomach the pain, but no guarantees on that. Anyways, so Brent, how long have you been getting into the 90s here? You remind me.
It hasn't really been that long. It's been since last November. I mean, really recent. Just kind of, and full credit, I got into it watching one of your podcasts. I think it was the November episode where you had the refractors with Nate's and Tanner.
Mm-hmm.
And that really just scratched the itch that I didn't know I had. And, so I blame you. No, I'm kidding. So it's funny, my story, I really stopped collecting right when the 90s inserts started. Mm. So, because of college and everything, I'm on the older tip with the gray hair. 91 through 95 was college for me. So there wasn't a whole lot of collecting that was put on hold. So, and when it came back, it was just kind of, that wasn't a thing for me for a while. Because I got married in 96. So, fast forward to this last November. I've been collecting for a long time, but not 90s.
And who have been collecting this whole time?
Well, besides Mariners, being born into a Minnesota Twins family that I am, since my family is from Idaho, where Harmon Killebrew is from, I've been collecting Twins most of my life. But I've lived in Washington State most of my life. Born in Alaska, and then moved down to Seattle. I don't know. A year later, because my dad was in the military, my dad worked for the airlines. So I've lived in Seattle, Tacoma, Puyallup, Kent, and now I'm in Eastern Washington. So obviously Mariners are in my DNA as well. But Harmon Killebrew was the guy that I really consistently collected for many, many years. And of course had a smattering of Mariners, but it was mainly the Twins. And then, but there's no Harmon Killebrew in the mid 90s, right? So, seeing the shine and the sparkle in the inserts in the 90s really got me going. And my Edgar was the guy, man. Edgar was the guy for me. So.
Well, I think that ended up being a good thing because Ryan and I also think about Ryan, if I were to ask you, hey, I'm a Mariners fan, I want to get into collecting Mariners. I feel like Edgar would be a really solid suggestion. Just made the Hall of Fame. His cards are not too overpriced. What was the Edgar scene like though in the mid 90s? Was he so completely overshadowed by Griffey and A-Rod that nobody really paid any attention to his cards?
Sorry, were you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. Sorry, okay. Right? Like, is this on?
I don't remember anything about Edgar. It was I knew about him being a Mariner fan, but my entire 90s Mariners my entire viewpoint was Griffey, and in the mid to late 90s, it was A-Rod, like when everybody was prospecting on him, and then when he blew up after the 96 season. But Edgar was just he was that guy. He was like your dad. Like, you
Kind of was.
loved what he did, but you don't really kind of go out and be like, yeah, my dad, until you get older, and then you're like, dude, my dad.
That's funny. I've never thought of it that way either. But I mean, he was the guy that has our, as everybody knows that he knows anything about Mariners. He has the most famous hit in our team's history. Yet he has nowhere near the collectability, if you're looking at value of cards and the amount of inserts that he's in, that Griffey and then Alex, and it's really interesting that his cards were probably even easier to get back then than they are now. So
Right.
that's really interesting. So Brent, you decide to collect Edgar, and did you decide upon that based upon his character and just liking him as a kid, or as a kid, or when you were in Seattle? Like what was the ultimate decider for you?
Well, and another connection I have with Edgar is my wife is Puerto Rican. So Edgar's a hero down there. I mean, he's not Clemente status, but, you got him and Pudge Rodriguez, and you got the guys that are, Hall of Famers now. So I had that connection too, that he kind of seemed like he ticked all the boxes for me. But looking back on my most fondest memories of the Mariners, Edgar was there. He was part of it, right? I mean, I go back to the beginning of the Mariners, right? My dad took me to the second ever Mariners game back in '77. Nolan Ryan was the pitcher against the California Angels. It was funny because my dad took me, and there was 14,000 people in the Kingdom, I think, for the second game, as opposed to 58 for the first game. So some things haven't changed, right? So, the hype was for one game. And so I've had Mariners in my DNA since the get-go. And collecting, through the late 70s, early 80s, it's pretty slim, right? Until you get to, maybe 84 with Alvin Davis. We finally had a guy that, he's rookie of the year. Maybe we have somebody, right? And then he had 3 or 4 decent years and kind of, he had Mark Langston. And it wasn't until Griffey, right? It wasn't until Griffey. But Edgar was the same time, right? But he was a little older. And looking back, he just seemed to be that constant glue, that thread that wove through everything that was Mariners magic to me. The double, of course, but of course I choose to start collecting him fervently once he gets into the Hall of Fame. So from a cost perspective, I'm like, that wasn't probably the best move, but so there's a lot of boxes that Edgar ticks for me. So and he's a cool dad, to Ryan's point. He's got cool dad status now.
He does.
He's kind of like the Tim Duncan of baseball. Like, when you look at his stats and you look at his body of work, you appreciate it so much, but there's zero flash. Like if Griffey was Kobe Bryant, Edgar was Tim Duncan.
Right. That's a great comparison. And
it is.
Again, he stayed with us his entire career. He never wanted to play for anybody else. I mean, he was consistent. He had maybe 1 or 2 down years after the 01 season, which even then he was a bit older. But he just, I could go on and on about him, but as an A-Rod collector, I remember Alex telling a story about how much he learned from Edgar he would literally ask him questions every plane ride, every time they had, time at the stadium when Edgar wasn't getting ready for games, he would just pick his brain. All of them would, because his preparation and his ability to study pitchers was way ahead of most guys, which shows in that he was an incredible hitter and deservingly needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And now he is. So everything about Edgar is amazing. And I think you chose the right player, especially because he's in a few of these cool insert sets too. He's in a few of them, and he's in all the other, when there's those short base sets of like 90, they try to get him in on most of those. It was usually A-Rod, Griffey, and Edgar would be the 3, or Jay Buhner.
He's been getting a lot of love in like the post-career stuff, like the last 4 or 5 years. Like Edgar's been getting slammed into everything, getting some nice refractors in there and a lot of autos, which is awesome.
Right. I feel like as a Mariner collector or a Mariners fan, I mean, I need to have one Edgar auto in my collection, just one. I mean, just because like you said, he embodies everything that the 90s Mariners were about, you know, in a sense, consistency, and just, yeah, I don't know, man, all the clutch hits. He was always clutch. I can't remember a time when he didn't come up clutch. I remember it was just like a grand slam that he hit. It was like off the Yankees, I want to say, bases loaded off Jeff Nelson. I think in 2000, year before we got Jeff Nelson, he cranked a grand slam off him. And it was like bottom of the ninth, down by 4, or bottom of the 8th, or down by 3, and he put us up 1. That was a huge hit. So, yeah, I have a lot of happy memories about Edgar. I'm sure we could just go on and on and on. But
cool,
I guess my next question for you, Brent, is, you know, when you called me up and said, hey, I need some recommendations on 90s cards, I hope, you know, Ryan, I would have done you proud with my recommendations, but I feel like have you used those recommendations and the group to kind of really go find a lot of the cards in your collection now? Has that been the biggest help?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, I think I told you, like, when you do your podcasts or your videos, I always pause it and I always go on, you know, Baseball Cardpedia, which was another one of your, you know, suggestions. Does Edgar have a card? Right. And it's about 50-50. You know, there's some that he has, you know, he doesn't have the cool essential credentials, the future and the now, which he did. But there's some other key ones that he does. And yeah, absolutely did. So I went and looked, you know, the Star Rubies, which I'm waiting for. I have the next year one, not the real pretty cool one that you know about.
Really
but
nice,
I know they are. But yeah, it's been fun to just see what he has, right? And to see, you know, there's some things that I wish he did, but there's other things that I know that he has and others don't have, right? So I'm, you know, it's kind of a blessing and a curse where you don't want him to have everything. I think about, you know, if I was a Griffey collector, he has pretty much everything. And whether you decide to go after everything, you know, that's another story. But pretty blessed to have what I have with Edgar in the 90s inserts.
Yeah, he does.
Griffey was so good, they put him in some pitching only inserts. They're just like, put him in there. He sells packs.
Why not? Right. Exactly.
I mean, Ryan, what was that like? Just to bring up Griffey there for a second. I mean, obviously everybody collected him, whether they like the Mariners or not. Like, if you pulled a Griffey base card when you were a kid, you were excited. Like, that's how much everybody loved Griffey. But what was it like, you know, going through the 90s when he was like the man in baseball? I mean, when you go into shops, was there a whole case for just Griffey most of the time?
So I grew up in Northern California. I lived there till end of 2007. And the shop I went to, they had one side that was dedicated to football because that was the big thing. You had the 49ers.
Right.
Like it was huge where I'm from. And on their baseball side, they had all their cases, and, you know, they had a few like mismatched kind of big inserts, but primarily it was Griffey, Frank Thomas. Like, that was it.
Interesting. I mean, now you say that. I mean, like, how were the fans of him? Were people loving Griffey just as much in California as they were Seattle? I mean, was he just like the Michael Jordan of baseball, right? Like, everybody, if you said Ken Griffey Jr., people, oh yeah, I know who that is. Right off the bat, was it pretty
as far as I remember? Like, I mean, I was mid 90s. I was like 13, 14, and my best friend was also a Mariner fan. We were both kind of Griffey fans together. So my little world, like, that was all there was. And the shop owners, they would always set aside cards for me. They'd have, like, on Halloween, instead of giving out candy, they would have like these little grab bags, and you would go in, and if you were a Frank Thomas guy, they'd be like, here's your Frank Thomas. And there would be like, it'd be like a little, like a lunch sack basically with a Frank Thomas card in there. And for me, I got the Griffey one. But yeah, it was, like I said, it was primarily football. So, I mean, a lot of the people that were big collectors back then, I would look at them and they would just be like, I need that Marshall Falk. I need that Heath Schuler, or whoever was big at the time. And I'd just be like, baseball, baseball. But the only ones that anybody ever talked about was Griffey, Frank Thomas, and just kind of the big guys that would sell packs basically.
So is that really what kind of started you off on your Griffey path, though? Is just because where he was the popular guy and you already liked the Mariners type thing, and so it was just an easy decision, or was there a memory that kind of cemented it for you?
It was kind of the perfect storm. So I had aunts that lived in Yakima. So just kind of, I ended up becoming a Mariner fan, and I didn't realize they were just horrible at the time. I didn't realize they were the laughing stock of baseball in the mid 80s. And had I known that, like, I might be a Yankee fan right now, and we might have dueling A-Rod stories in our collections.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Because that was the team that I collected. And then all of a sudden my team has the guy. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the perfect storm. Like that, I was all in. I spent 89 just, please mom, please dad, please dad. You got to get me some packs. You got to get me some packs. I got to get the upper deck rookie. I got to get it.
That's so funny that you bring up the upper deck rookie, because Aaron Davis, I'm sure you guys know him. He's been on our podcast. He's so right. I mean, when Griffey finally came along in '89, man, that was the only card anybody probably chased at baseball that year, and there's a whole nother side story on the Griffey card, but we can get into that later or another time. But I mean, everybody has their copy, right? Ryan's got
this one in '89. I have a graded.
Mine's a PSA right now.
Oh, so you do have one, but it's getting graded.
It was a pack pull in '89, so it's sentimental.
Pulled them yourselves? Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And you said you have a graded one too, Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one I didn't pull from a pack. That one I just, my story is I bought.
Yeah. We have a lot of that. I mean, this was actually, I got this from the only card shop in Bellingham. I don't know if you guys have ever been down to that area, but downtown Bellingham. And the card shop owner, like, if you're not approaching him the right way, I can already tell he can come off as kind of a jerk, But I went right in there. I was like, I'm from Alaska. I do a 90s podcast. And he, like, just brightened up, and he was showing me mantles. He was showing me inside. He was just showing me everything. But I wanted to leave with a souvenir, so I bought one of the 3 Griffies he had and put it in this old school looking case. So I think it's cool to have that piece of history, Yeah.
I actually kind of did a similar thing. So I was at the Edgar Hall of Fame induction, and I wanted a Griffey card from Cooperstown.
Yeah.
So I went, like, there are just tons of overpriced baseball card shops lining that town, and I would just thumb through box after box, and I ended up just getting some just terrible card for like $1. And I'm like, it's mine.
It is fun to kind of make that memory, though, and that's what I wanted to do. I mean, it was cool too, because that card, as a kid, I dreamed of owning that card. It was $100 in Beckett, and I never saw one with my own eyes growing up, because I lived in Soldotna, Alaska. Anybody that had one was certainly not going to trade it to me for all the stuff that I had. But it definitely is a card that embodies Seattle Mariners. And so anyway, that's fantastic. Cool. I'm glad you guys, and that's cool that you guys both have one that you pulled from packs. So an awesome story. So Brent, going back to you, now that you've been doing this for about 6 months, what have you been more focused on the Edgar stuff now more than your Killebrew stuff, or are you trying to kind of balance it out? Like, has the 90 shine won you over yet?
It has. I can kid and say, yeah, it has. It's legit. So it's a balancing act, but I love it because I have the older vintage that I can look at, and then also the 90s inserts as well. So it kind of ticks both boxes. So like sometimes more days I'm prone to just rummage through my Edgars, and other days I want to go back and look at the old stuff. So it just depends on the day or the mood or the moment.
Right.
But it's fun to have that new chapter, I guess, in my collecting, even though it's kind of looking back, because I skipped that era of collecting, to go back and kind of relive it, because I'm a true junk wax era kid, right? From 84 to 90, I just had a ton of cards. So that was the heyday of my collecting, and ironically also probably the leanest years of Mariners. I mean, and that's saying something, because there's been a lot of lean years, right? But the mid to late 80s were really lean, but as a Mariners fan, that's your team, that's who you collect, right? The Twins, thankfully, were good. I had 87 for the Twins. They won a World Series. They wanted to get in 91. So, I could be that guy that could, not that I was bandwagon, but I could kind of pick and choose. But I never abandoned my sweet Mariners. They were always my team. So,
right,
because those were the games I went to, right? So, right.
what 90s cards, this is just kind of in my mind. I think anybody that collects 90s heavily, that loves that era of their collection, because Ryan's got an amazing Felix Hernandez collection. But so, Ryan, you have 2 points of view. You can go to that Felix collection and be like, oh man, these are the cards when I pass them, I stop and look, but for the 90s, I mean, I'm curious because I know which ones in my mind that you have that I'm wondering if these are the ones, but like what types of cards do you see yourself gravitating towards that you want to look at again in your collection, or when you're picking cards up, they're the ones that you go and look for first?
For the most part, like it's stuff that I wanted as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are, and it's not even necessarily Mariner stuff. Like I see a 97 Bowman Chrome Kerry Wood and it stops me because that was, when I was a kid, I would see that in the hot list on Beckett every week.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's like, to me, those are the cards that I look at and I'm just like, I got to get that. And just so many cards. And like, especially like the gaudy 90s stuff, like they took so many chances in the 90s because there were just a million companies out there and they put every off the wall technology they could think of. And the ones that landed, the ones that really stuck, like those are the ones that we're looking at now. And we're like, these are amazing. These are iconic. But there are also just so many weird off the wall ones that you're like, why'd you do that? But it kind of makes it cool in the same way almost.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Pacific for doing a lot of those off the wall, ideas. But for guys like us, oh yeah, dude, there's one sitting right over here. I think they and all those other companies had to try to do that, man. If they didn't compete with each other, Donruss, we got Pinnacle, we've got Pacific, we've got Upper Deck, we've got Skybox, Flair. You got all these companies that are trying to innovate it and get you to catch that product. Like that product's going to catch your eye, and that's the one you're going to go after. And there were so many that they had to really go after it and go off the wall, like you're saying, which is, I mean, imagine what that would be like now. It would be awesome. People like Gene Arena, who we've had on here, obviously would be designing cards again probably and just totally blow people out of the water with what they could come up with. But for you, Brent, you've been doing this for 6 months now. What types of cards do you see yourself gravitating towards with Edgar?
Well, and I'll show off my first. So after I talked to you, I figured that, you kind of have to go with the one that started it all, right? So I'm thankful to have that card, Edgar, to be in that set, right? For
our listeners, can you say which card that is?
That's the 93 Finest Refractor.
Okay.
Of Edgar. So that was the first one that I had to get, right? So that's kind of the one that started it all. And that's, truly was when I was kind of oblivious to 90s collecting. I was completely off the radar for me. And to your point, looking back at it now, it was so competitive, right? With technology and things were just coming out. It's like, okay, how can we up the game? How can we, do more than the other company? What can we do to make it shine more and be more just eye grabbing? And that's kind of the world that I still find myself just getting blown away with. Is like, this existed then, and what they did to try to, push the needle and, just the creativity itself.
Right.
So it kind of even transcends what we're seeing now, in 2020, there's some amazing stuff, but man, it was all about the 90s that really started it. And, you would agree, really kind of superseded it, right? I mean, there's some amazing technology. So
I think you see companies trying to go back and even duplicate the stuff they did in the 90s, and you just can't. It like you're saying, it's transcendent. You can't. It cannot be done again. People try, but it just cannot. It cannot be replicated and give you the same feeling. It's just like somebody redoing a movie. Very very few times do you have somebody redo a movie and it ends up better than the original. I mean, you can't do it. And
everybody likes the new Star Wars better than the original ones. What are you talking about?
Well, that's a lie. I mean, but again, though, the whole, you can go into how, kids nowadays, they've never seen the 90s cards. Why would they even want to collect those? Because they they want to collect the 2020 tops and pull the Trout or pull a Bo Bichette or Alvarez rookie and all this. And so, they're not even going to know about how these technologies and these cards influenced, what we see now in a sense. And again, can you imagine if Flair came back or Pinnacle or Donruss? I mean, they'd be able to just get some of those designers back in on it. But anyway, we can live in that dream world some other time. I do have another question for you too, because I think Ryan and I would say something completely different, Brent, but what kind of advice, give a couple tips for people who, like, let's say somebody in a couple months comes in and watches this podcast and like, I'm thinking about getting back into collecting the 90s too. I mean, what would be a couple of tips that you could give those people now that you've been doing this for about 6 months? I mean, because it is overwhelming at first when you start diving into the 90s. I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm still learning about cards I didn't know about or learning the intricacies about them.
I'm still learning about cards from sets that were out of my price range as a kid.
That's it right there, man. You're absolutely right. All these unproduced cards or cards that were unproduced, but unreleased. But what do you think, Brent? I mean, give a tip or two, man. Where can, what can people do, you think, if they're getting back into 90s collecting?
Well, for me, it's easy to say that this world frightens and confuses you, right? Where it's just kind of like, I am overwhelmed, but don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Just look at all the beautiful options that you have for cards. For me, it was like just opening up the floodgates that I didn't know was there, right? And I'm going to show a card real quick. And I know you've shown this recently, Matt. This is just the Sweet Strokes. This isn't a hard card to get. This isn't numbered. This isn't rare. I mean, but just look at it. And sorry about the glare, but it's just a great card. And that would be my first tip, is just go for what you think is beautiful. Go for what you think is great, whether it's numbered, whether it's rare, whether it's platinum mirror, whether it's, whatever. If whatever you think is a great card, then it's a great card. And I know that is the way that you look at collecting as a whole, right? But for 90s parallels and for inserts, that's what I've done. I've looked at what I like, and I know that there's some that are really popular, and even a couple, Matt, that you said, you should look at these. And I looked at them and I'm like, those are great, but they just don't resonate with me. There are others that really will resonate with me that maybe don't resonate with you or Ryan. So don't just go, I know you had a peer pressure episode recently. Don't let peer pressure dictate what you get, right? Just go for what's beautiful, what's great, what's unique, and what really resonates in your mind, into your eye.
All right. That's awesome. And there's plenty of options out there. There's plenty of $1 to $5 options. There's plenty of $5 to $50 options. And then if you want to go beyond that $50 range, I mean, for me, I held that $70 maximum amount for 3 years, which bit me in the rear a few times, but I didn't know, like the market for these cards has just gone bananas. But again, I did the same thing for a while. I was only picking up stuff I found visually appealing. And then you'll see in about 2 or 3 years, you're going to run out of those. And then you're going to find these other cards that you at first passed over 50 times on eBay. And then you pick them up and you're like, whoa, like that Diamond Tribute card and the Diamond Magic card I got that I showed off. And in one of my videos, turn the middle of it and it changes like a rainbow sundial looking. I mean, it was just like, holy moly, this card is awesome. So yeah, there's never ending options when it comes to that. So I would say I'm with you. I mean, what about you, Ryan? If you were to give advice to somebody coming into the 90s, if, I came up to you or whatever in person or talked to you on Facebook and said, hey, I noticed you got a lot of 90s inserts. Where do I start? Like, what would you say to somebody?
Find a guy. Like, that would be my biggest things. My biggest regret is after Griffey left town, I kind of stopped PCing Griffey for a while. And in like 2007, like Brandon Morrow was my guy. Regrets. But find your guy. Like, find a dude that you can look at and be like, all right, I love watching highlights of this guy. Or if you were old enough to see them play, you're like, I loved watching this guy play. And then like just browse eBay. I mean, I think like we can, baseball card Pete is a great avenue, but a lot of times you don't get to see the card of your guy. Like they might have one example, but if you just browse eBay, just type in your guy and just sit there at midnight and scroll for 2 hours while your wife is sitting there like, go to sleep.
Right.
And just go down the rabbit hole and look at cards and be like,
Right.
this is the one, like, this is amazing. Or if like the Facebook groups are fantastic because everybody's posting pictures of different inserts that maybe you never saw. And all of a sudden you go, hey, is my guy in that set?
Right. I agree. And I think when you said find a guy, I also thought you were thinking you were going to say like find someone who you can ask questions to. I feel like that's really important, where if I was going to dabble in. Oh, that is what you meant. Okay.
No.
Oh, that isn't what you meant. Okay. You're trying to say the same thing.
I'm going to take credit for your idea.
Yeah, there you go. No, but I mean, I think that's huge, like if I knew there were guys like, Brent found the podcast, and I think you want to find somebody who's enthusiastic and knowledgeable about the 90s. I still go to, Rodney Vallejo all the time with pricing questions or questions about a card I don't know about, because that guy in my mind has extensive knowledge of everything, but if I can't get a hold of him, I can go to another person in the group. And I think that's so important to have a friendship with multiple collectors so you can check in. I mean, Brent has sent me a couple, like, what do you think about this price? And how about this one? And I was able to steer him away from a couple of eBayers that we're not going to speak of because we don't shout people out, but you know exactly who I'm talking about, Ryan. He was about to go for a card that was way overpriced. I'm like, I know you love the way this thing looks, man, but I would wait till somebody else lists one. And I mean, without the resources of fellow collectors, you would be a bit over your head with the 90s at first, because it is just a lot. I think when I got back in, I started on COMC, and I just went on there and I added A-Rods that I liked. And thankfully I was able to pick up a couple that very rarely show up, ever on the open market. And I didn't know. I just thought, oh yeah, this looks nice, click. So yeah, it's kind of funny how that ends up happening. But once I got in and I started getting into the groups and asking questions, I was able to really focus in on certain cards. And it's always nice when you have a friend that says, look, I know there's this card up for sale, and if you don't buy it at this price, you're going to regret it. I wish that I had those friends when I first got in, when the PMG A-Rod was $100, but we won't talk about that anymore. But well, that's awesome, Brent. I'm glad that you're, really finding joy in the 90s, and the nostalgia factor is a big reason why all of us still talk about it and show off the cards, because I think a lot of us would agree that was some of the best baseball that we remember. The newer baseball is fun to watch, and, we cheer for our Mariners, but I have so much fun when I go back and watch highlights of the 90s Mariners and the My Oh My video and, the double, of course, and all this other stuff. But anyways.
I reluctantly cheer for my Mariners right now. It's been hard.
It is. Yeah.
It's you can only be disappointed so much to where you fall into this trance of just not caring anymore. Like I'm just numb to losing. I'm like, oh, they lost again, whatever. But when they win like 3 or 4 in a row, like last year they started off on fire, I was like, should I have false hope? Should I have legit hope? And then they just tanked and had like the terrible year. So I was like, hey, yeah, whatever, who cares? And that's to kind of transition. I feel like that's where we're at as Mariner fans now. We know we're going to suck. We're rebuilding. I mean, we traded everyone away except Seager. And so are they going to be good in the future? I think we would all agree we have this hope that in like 2 or 3 years, when all of our prospects really get up to the majors and start playing well, we'll be good. But I mean, I don't know, man. I don't think I've ever cheered as hard as I did when I was a Mariners fan in the 90s. And I didn't get to keep up with them the way I do now with social media, but I am curious. We're going to start off with this. I want to know what your first – so we heard from Brent. Your first Mariner game was the second game ever played in the Kingdom. Nolan Ryan pitched. Do you have a memory from that game you want to share? Anything that sticks out?
Yeah. Some dude stole my hat. So my dad bought me a hat and the original Mariner Trident, of course, and I'm walking down the cement walkways of the outside of the Kingdome, and I'm just, it's my first baseball game ever. I'm 5 years old, right? This is 1977, so you do the math. And I'm just floating. I'm like, what did I just watch? And my dad bought me a hat, and I'm going down the walkway afterwards, and some dude just walked by and just snapped my hat off. And my dad bought me one the next day. I'm good. So I'm not scarred for life. But the Kingdome was so huge. I mean, I'm at a 5-year-old going to the Kingdome and see. I mean, granted, there was only 18,000 people there. I didn't know who Nolan Ryan was. I didn't know who any players were. I mean, half the people in Seattle didn't know who we had on the team. It was the second day, right?
Right.
But it was amazing. I've played baseball since I was 5 years old, up through community college. So obviously, baseball is a huge part of me. I remember my dad taking me and getting me some baseball cards afterwards, the first Mariners cards, because we had a team finally, since my dad was still bitter that they lost the Pilots, so, the one year that the Seattle had the Pilots, he was still, yearning for baseball. So he took me to that game in 77. And I just have so many memories of the Mariners in the late 70s, going to bat night. I mean, imagine that. They give out full-fledged size bats in the late 70s, right? I mean,
never happened
imagine
now.
that would never happen now, right? I mean, they check you at the door if anything, larger than a keychain, but they're handing you bats at the game, right? And and the USS Mariner in the outfield, the ship that would rise up whenever they got a home run and shoot a cannon.
We need to bring that back, Ryan. We need to bring that back.
We got to bring that back.
Unbelievable.
So many good memories. I mean, I've been to Mariners games every year since 1977, and been to a few good ones, as maybe we'll talk about, but obviously a few rough ones. But you never waver because you love your team, right? You always love your team.
Ryan, do you remember your first Mariner game?
I do not remember my first when I was a kid, but I actually have a good Mariner-related story that will tie into getting the hat stolen and you being a Dora fan.
Okay, let's hear it.
So it starts off a little sad, but it's only for like a few seconds, so bear with me.
All right.
So my dad passed away in 2006, February 26th, and my birthday is March 31st. A few weeks after he passed away, a box shows up from I think it was MLB.com or whatever the baseball website is from their shop. There was a big Mariner duffel bag and a Joey Cora custom jersey that he had ordered for my birthday before he passed away. Wow. So me and my best friend and a couple of our other friends, we went down to Oakland that following season, go catch the A's and Mariners games. Me and my best friend, both Mariners fans. Our other two friends, they were losers. They're A's fans. We catch the first game. I had my camera. We got some amazing shots. Second game, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy the game. I'm going to take my glove. I'm going to just go enjoy it, try and catch some autographs. We leave all our stuff in the room. And me and my buddy, we head down nice and early. And if you've never been to Oakland, the hotel, it's like a mile or two. I don't remember how long it is, but you have to walk down kind of the seedy part of town in the middle of nowhere, just to basically like middle of nowhere kind of, and go up to the stadium. While we're at the game, our two friends who were A's fans kind of stayed back to drink. They ended up talking to a suspicious looking lady. We'll leave it at that. Basically, she was scouting our room out. And after they left, somebody broke into our room and jacked all our stuff. Like my camera was gone, our laptop was gone, my Joey Cora jersey was gone.
No!
Everything.
Oh, man.
Like it would have been sad just on its own, but it's like, dude, that was like the last thing my dad ever bought for me.
No, I was hoping you were wearing the stinking jersey at least.
I did the
first gosh. Man. Dang. Well, Oakland sucks even more now in my book, so darn it. Well, okay. Well, I'm going to bring everybody's spirits back up then with my first Mariner game. I remember it clear as day. It was 1996. It was the middle of my favorite players. Should have been MVP season. I'll say it as many times in this podcast. because it's BS that he did not win the MVP. But it was right before the All-Star game, and or right after the All-Star game in '96, and Mark Langston was pitching for the Angels, which was obviously, anybody knows any history, the Mariners traded Mark Langston and another player for Randy Johnson, and that ended up working out quite well. Randy did not pitch that day. I think it was Sterling Hitchcock that pitched because Randy was hurt most of '96, and Griffey was also hurt, so I didn't even get to see Griffey play that day. It was Rich Amaral in center field, and the only home run hit in that game was by Alex Rodriguez, and he hit it off Langston into right field over the. Hold on, wait. What did you have?
Is that Amaral?
There it is.
Ooh.
Yes, awesome, awesome. So at the time, Joey Cora made an impact on me. My grandfather brought the My Oh My video, and so just kind of sad. I really wanted to see Joey and Griffey play more than A-Rod at the time because he wasn't my favorite at the time. Griffey's not playing. A-Rod or Cora didn't even start the game. He came in the 7th inning, and he didn't even get a hit. So it was just like, it was really, I didn't care because I was having fun, but they ended up winning in like the 12th inning on a pass ball. It was pretty cool. Paul Sereno scored, and it was just an amazing experience. I think A-Rod had 3 hits that day. Edgar I think he went 0 for 1 with 4 walks. Like it was crazy to see the guy. He was so patient. I remember that sticking in my mind. Like, man, this guy is one of the best hitters I've ever seen. He doesn't swing at anything. And so, yeah, it was really a game that I've gone and looked up the box score. You can go to baseballreference.com. You can look up the box score, and I remember every play that happened in that game. And so it was awesome. I had a great first experience going to Mariners games. And so from that point on, I chased down Joey Cora cards. One of the first ones I ever got was, and I still have it, which is awesome, is this 90, I believe this is a 96 refractor, 96 finest refractor, right? Or is that 95? I can't remember. 95. Which is funny because most baseball cards, you can tell what year it is by looking at the back, and it's the year following the stats, right? But this one's a bit different because it has its 95 stats up to that point, which is kind of interesting because that was his first year on the team. But
that's a nice card.
Hey, look at that. That's right, man. Yeah.
I'm not getting very much shine on there.
That's okay. Mine didn't. I could have an enormous amount of sunshine coming in if I wanted. But anyway, so
that you with that one.
What's that?
I couldn't one up you with that one.
Oh yeah. Yep. I can't imagine anybody wanting to do something like that. That would just be poor form, right?
Right.
So I was able to get also my first autograph card, which is, as you can see how faded it is. I've had it for so long, but it was awesome to have a Joey Cora autograph. And later my dad got a ball signed by him because my dad worked security for the Mariners at the Kingdom games on the weekend. So that was awesome. That was my kind of foray into collecting Mariners. And so, thinking about Mariners in the 90s, we'll start with Brent, guest of honor. Besides the double, tell me a Mariners memory or two that stand out to you when you think about the 90s Mariners.
Absolutely. And I will show you a card. I actually made a video of this event. Chris Bosio, 93 refractor. And to go with that, I have a baseball with his autograph because he threw a no-hitter April 22nd, 1993. And I was at that game. And
nice.
I think I did a story on my YouTube channel. My buddy and I, it was a Thursday evening. We were just chilling, I think, at Jack in the Box. And we're like, what do you want to do? And let's just go to a Mariners game. Nothing else to do. So we went there. I think there was 12,000 people there. Got really good seats. The second 100 level right on the first base side. And lo and behold, Chris Bosio throws a no-hitter. I mean, it was just obviously, I think I'm going to go to a Mariners game tonight because I think they might throw a no-hitter. I mean, you don't think that, obviously. But
right.
I mean, just the odds of it, because it was not even on our radar until an hour before the game. We actually missed the first inning. Saw a no-hitter, only no-hitter I've ever seen. Not everybody can say that. So that was really cool. So this card that I had, the Chris Bosio, was one of the first 90s inserts refractor that I ever had because of that moment, right? So that would be one of my greatest moments. And then if I could rewind back to 1989, I was actually at the game when Griffey hit his first home run.
Wow.
I was in left field, and it was hit 3 rows in front of me.
Oh,
and I remember,
man,
I know
awesome.
I was that close, right? And people knew. They just knew this is Ken Griffey Jr., right? He wasn't in the minors that long. This was the heir apparent. There was a buzz. There was a buzz about him. And when that ball was hit and it landed into the bleachers, people just dove on it because they knew that was the beginning, right? So to be at that game in hindsight, obviously, is something that you're pretty, stoked and proud about being a part of. But that was, beginning of, as we all know, a career that transcended not just Seattle, lore, but it just transcended baseball. He became one of the most or the biggest athlete. You could put Jordan, obviously, but Griffey was right there. He was the face of baseball.
Jordan never made it out of minors.
Yeah. I know, right? I know,
right?
Underachiever, right? I mean, he had so much potential.
I'm actually bringing up a video here, Brent. If I were to, have you watched the home run by Griffey? Can you find yourself in the video?
I know where I'm at because I've watched that video countless times. It's too fuzzy if you zoom in, but where the ball hit, I'm 3 rows ahead of it and a little to the left.
Oh,
right
yeah,
over the plexiglass.
Okay, right, because they had this hockey glass in there, right?
They added the plexi to the left because the left field wall was too low at the time, right? Not like the right field wall, which was, the second highest wall besides the monster. So if you go, let's see, keep on going, and then keep on going a little higher. Now go to the left. Go to the left. I'm right a little more. This is so funny. I'm right in there.
So you're right in here?
There. Yeah, I'm right in there.
That is awesome.
It was my dad and I. Yeah.
Is that your dad right there or right there?
I think he's right there. Yeah, because you can't see me. I was 89, so I was what?
So there's a kid right here. That has to be you. There's a smaller person. That is awesome.
That's my assumption. Yeah.
That is awesome. That is cool. Well,
that's cool, dude.
Right, I mean, the only other thing you could have said is and here's the ball. Like that would have just fallen off my chair. Ryan would have been salivating at the mouth. So, I mean, not to make you follow that up, Ryan, but give me a memory or two from some memories from the games that you've been to, the Mariners games that you've been to. I mean, now that we've got past your stuff getting stolen, hopefully you can go in a more positive direction. No, but give me a couple of memories that stand out from your Mariners games that you've been to.
Do they have to be 90s?
No. I mean, we're just talking Mariner. He had one from 89.
89.
So. Go for it.
I have 2. One is, like I mentioned earlier, I PC'd Brandon Morrow when he first came up.
Do you have a Brandon Morrow to show us? Because this will be epic if it makes it on the podcast.
Well, meh.
I just want to make sure we get
the last of my Morrow PC, but
nice. Hey,
he made it on a card of Griffey. Unbelievable.
That was the first Griffey auto I picked up, and it was because Morrow was on it.
That is awesome.
So I was a huge Morrow fan. Like I said, I grew up in California, and he pitched for Cal. Huge Morrow fan. Like right when I moved up here, it's shortly after the Mariners drafted him instead of Tim Lincecum. September of 2008. They had sent him down in the middle of the season to stretch his arm out so he could join the rotation. I think it was September 5th, if I remember right, against the Yankees. His first ever start. My wife and I go to the game. He goes 7 2/3, no hit innings. And Wilson Betemit pinch hits double, breaks up the no hitter.
Oh, that's right. He had an amazing debut, didn't he? Holy smokes, I forgot about that because he was so bad for us after that.
And then we went to the 2007 All-Star game. Ichiro won MVP, the only inside the park home run in All-Star.
You saw that? You saw the All-Star game home run? That is awesome. That is awesome. And because it ricocheted off the wall and went to the right of Griffey, and he had to chase it down.
Granted, it was kind of a trade-off because we got to see the worst ever home run derby. Like that derby was marketed on the back of putting balls in the cove, and not a single ball got put in the cove. There was only like one or two lefties in the Derby. I think it was Prince Fielder. He's the only lefty I can remember.
Right. Yeah. None of them were going oppo to try to hit one over there. They needed it. That was when Josh Hamilton needed to be big back in those days. He'd have put like 20 of them in the bay.
I think that was the next year was New York, right?
Yep.
Was it 08?
Yes, it was. Yep. That was awesome. Yeah, because 07 was the end when he came to Cincy at the end of the year there. So
Yep.
Wow. That is awesome. That, man, what a cool experience. That's one thing I wish I could have done, because I remember in 01, I mean, for all the Mariners fans, or even if you're not a fan, we have an amazing feat of having 116 wins in a season, and having, arguably the most impressive rookie to ever play for the Mariners, and that would be this man right here, Ichiro Suzuki.
Yeah,
I remember this card was the EX rookie, was something I used to look at and dream about as a kid. And going to this All-Star game, Brent, you'll recognize this card. Going to this All-Star game in 01, which was in Seattle, the only All-Star game that's been there, have been awesome. But of course I was commercial fishing with my dad. So I remember coming here to Sitka to start fishing, and guys were flying back from Seattle with their All-Star jerseys on and talking about the Mariners. I mean, they won 116 games and then got beat by the Yankees. So I hate the Yankees.
Fault of Freddie Garcia. That dude was awesome in those playoffs against them.
He was good, but they couldn't hit, they couldn't pitch, everything just like, and they almost got beat by Cleveland. It was just so bizarre to see a team underperform in the playoffs, but then that became our MO for the rest of time since then. We've never seen the playoffs, and yeah, it's been rough. I know.
I don't begrudge the Mariners trading Adam Jones for that reason. Like after the 07 season, we kind of overachieved a little bit, and we went out and they got the best available arm, and it didn't pan out for us, but like sometimes you trade based on the result, but the merits of the trade at the time.
Who did we trade Adam Jones for?
Eric Bedard. Adam Jones, George Sherrill, and Pat Tillman.
Yep.
And we had, and one thing that's crazy too, I mean, if we can go down the list of players we've had that didn't pan out until they got traded, we could be talking for about 3 or 4 hours. But I just, one guy that stands out to me is we had Cliff Lee on our team at one point pitching with Felix. And Chone Figgins was signed that same year. Oh, I just shudder when I think of how his 190 batting average after coming from California or Anaheim.
Story when you're done.
So I don't know if I can go any further beyond that, but it's definitely been really, really tough for all of us as Mariner fans going forward. And why do you think we collect the 90s so heavily? Because we have so many happy memories to fall back on.
Right.
I mean, before we get into showing off, I know you guys have got a lot of cards out, and I love showing cards off. But any other stories that you want to bring up? We'll start with you, Ryan. You said you had one.
It's a good one too.
Okay.
It's like a 1 in a million, just absurd story.
Okay.
So it was it 09 or 2010, whatever year we got Cliff Lee. He got hurt in spring training, and he had to start the season in Tacoma, making a couple rehab starts. Me and 2 of my friends, we go down to Tacoma. All we wanted to do was get Clifton Pfeiffer Lee's autograph. we caught like the first inning, and then we're like, you know what? We're gonna dip out, and we're just gonna wait. If you've never been to Tacoma, there's basically one entrance in and one entrance out. So even the players have to walk right by you. So we go out there and we're just standing there and we're waiting. And we're like, all right, he's got to come out at some point. We never see Cliff Lee. And at one point, one of my friend, Becky, she turns around and there's this car, like a really nice looking car, just out in the middle of the parking lot. And she's kind of looking back at him, and I think that's Cliff Lee. I'm like, no. We just kind of start walking over, and he's kind of doing this. He's like, come on.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I'll sign for you. Just shut the hell up. Like, don't let all these people, because at this point, like, hundreds of people are waiting there. So we go over, and he signs for me and my 2 friends. I got like the crappiest autograph ever because right about the time I got mine, people started noticing.
Mhm.
And I got like a half a Cliff Lee signature. So I got like clip.
He just like threw it at you and closed the door and left.
But so we ended up going back over and we stood by the lines, kind of see any of the prospects that might come out. Greg Hallman comes out, the late Greg Hallman. He's got a like to-go kind of like Chinese box or whatever. And on top of it is a sticky note that says Cliff, and it's got a phone number on it. And sure as shit, he had Cliff Lee's phone number. And sorry for the swearing.
Keep going.
We may or may not have put the number in our phones. One of us may or may not have had a drunken phone call and hung up when it went to voicemail.
Unbelievable.
I still have a phone that has the number, but I don't think I have a charger that goes to it anymore.
It can't be his number. It can't be his number anymore. There's no way, right? Wow. He would probably crack up at that story now, though. You know what I mean? Like, more than ever, players are accessible, especially retired players, than they've ever been before via social media. So that would be an amazing story.
Would make him crack up, but
maybe that you could just tell the first part. Wow.
Right.
I mean, wow, that's something else, man. I don't know if I can follow that up. I mean, I have my A-Rod autograph story, but that's that pales in comparison to that. You know, I mean, getting Alex's autograph, I've showed it on the podcast a couple times. Especially having my grandpa there, it was one of the coolest memories I had because that was my second or third game ever that I'd been to. I think my second, because I'd seen him in '96, and then I went back with my grandpa and watched the Mariners, and Alex came over because there was a bunch of women in their early 20s yelling and screaming at him. And so, of course, I would have gone over there, you know, at the time, and he just came on over and, got him to sign my program. I have it framed. So that's my autograph in person. To have my favorite player's autograph that I got at a game. I remember kids at school thought I was lying to them when I told them, you don't have Alex's autograph. I'm like, okay, sure. I was only right there when it happened. I'll never forget either the kids like walking by just crying, just kids just devastated they didn't get it. And I was down there waiting, like Brian, I was down there waiting. You remember where you get things signed in the Kingdome on that one left field line? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I was standing there right behind these women who I, probably should have paid way more attention to, but I didn't. And I was just watching Alex take grounders, and he came over. So anyway, I'll never forget that memory.
Not worth anything anymore.
Whose autographs aren't?
The women's.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, if I'd have had a picture, it would have just been all rear ends with like a between both rear ends picture of A-Rod right there. Anyways, we're gonna just move on from that. But yeah, those memories of those first few games are gonna always be with me. My grandpa, the best ticket he ever bought for me was right behind the dugout when Joey, Alex, and Griffey all played at the same time, and so they literally were all walking right up at the game. And my mom's got those hidden away in storage somewhere. I'd love to find those pictures. That would bring back some good memories. But what's the most recent game you've all been to? I'm curious about that. Before we move on, let's have this be our last question before we show off some cards here. But what's the last Mariner game you guys went to? Go ahead, Brent. Ryan, go for it.
Oh, I went to a few last year. I don't like they were just. I went kind of reluctantly, so I mean, honestly, I don't really. They were just games.
Yeah, just to have the experience of going.
Yeah, you got to go to a couple.
Yeah, right.
But nothing that stands out.
All right. What about you, Brent? Did you go any games last year? Watch them play?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I'm thankfully with my work, I can travel back over to Seattle often, so I was able to work around opening day with my dad, which has kind of become a tradition. And then we usually go to when the Twins are in town, since my dad he's just like me. He's a Mariners guy, but he's also a Twins guy. And then sometimes a couple cousins and an uncle will come up from Idaho, and we'll catch some Twins games as well. So I saw about 3 Twins games, the whole series actually, and then opening day last year. So about 4 games.
Awesome. Yeah, I did not go last year on purpose, but I did go 2 years ago when we had a really good team. And I remember my favorite player 2 years ago was Edwin Diaz. And so I was like, I would love to see him pitch, which would mean we're either getting crushed by a bunch, we're up by a bunch, or it's more than likely he's in for a save. And they're playing the Tigers. So I got to see Cabrera and Victor Martinez a couple years back. And it was awesome, man. I think that was actually 2 years ago. So it's been a while since I've been, but we're up. We end up getting like a clutch double to tie the game in the 8th, and then get another base hit was Span on the team 2 years ago? Bernard Span?
I think so.
Yeah. So he had the go-ahead hit, and then Diaz came in, and he threw like 2 pitches over 100 miles an hour. I'm like, I'm never going to see that again in person. I saw a guy throw 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and they won 4-3. So it was awesome. That's my last game, and until they're good again, I probably won't go unless somebody's like, I got tickets, let's do it, But anyways, I don't know about you guys, but I have high hopes, but it could be a while.
Right.
All right. So let's spend a little bit of time here showing off some of our favorite Mariners cards, which should be easy because that's what we PC. But I try to grab a variety of things here, and I have some that really stuck out when I was collecting as a kid that I couldn't afford, and some that I've discovered now. So we'll just, kind of do a round table type thing. Let's start with our guest of honor, Brent. You got a few cards there, that 90s cards that have stood out?
Well, I know you guys have both shown off, I think, your Coras, but I'll show off my Edgar 95 Finest. And I know we're kind of done with story time, but I was at game 1 of the 95 playoffs, not as a fan, but I was working at the game. My wife and I were engaged at the time, and we needed some extra cash, and we had been selling T-shirts at concerts, and they called up and said, hey, we need some extra help for the Mariners game. Would you want to come down there? I'm like, duh, it's sold out, right? So we get there, and my wife is told, we're going to go up to the 300 level. You're going to sell T-shirts up there, and you, Brent, you're going to come with me. I'm like, where? We're going to put you outside. Outside? They put me outside to sell programs to all the people waiting to get in for the very first Mariners playoff game in history. So people were just throwing cash at me. Give me that program. Give me that program. I had a pile of cash this high. And just overwhelmed, right? So that 95 card means a lot to me. Long story short, I go into the press elevator to go up to meet my wife, who jumps in at the 200 level, Reggie Jackson, because we're playing the Yankees, right? So Reggie Jackson gets gets in the elevator, and he looks at me. It's like, you've had a busy day, kid, because I had a bag full of cash, literally like a bag full of cash. And I'm like, yes, I did, Mr. Jackson. It's kind of right,
Right.
So this 95 means a lot to me. Do you want me to show you some more, or do you want to move on?
Go for it. Yeah, show a couple more. We'll show like 2 or 3 at a time. Go for it.
I'm gonna, I guess I'll, go big or go home. So I got my platinum mirror gold here. This is probably my biggest Edgar that I have to date. Numbered out of out of 30. And you had mentioned before there was a couple people on eBay not to buy from, so I chose not to. And sure enough, this popped up about a month later, obviously for a more reasonable price.
Yes. Great card.
And then the other one I'll show off is a 97 Pinnacle certified mirror gold the year before.
Beautiful cards.
Just right. I mean, just what I'm doing right now, I do on almost a daily basis. I just kind of do this and just, it's almost like a calming Zen moment looking at these cards, right? So
it is.
I keep them in my office for, you want to look at these cards, right? So they're right there, and it kind of gives that kind of, and yeah, works well. So
that's awesome. Great choices to start off, man. I mean, I think when you're getting in the 90s too, you have to look into those mirror golds and anything gold and refractory from the 90s is almost an essential card. No pun intended.
Right.
But it definitely is. Ryan, you got a couple, just especially going off the theme of cards that, you look at and you're just, you're in awe of. I know you got a lot because I've seen some of your posts, but what did you come up with there?
So I'm actually gonna start with one that I don't think anybody else would necessarily show off.
Awesome.
But as a Mariner fan, I'm going to see how well
Oh,
I can
yeah.
get it to shine. But it is the International Refractor of Jose Cruz. Which
That car was a monster when he was on fire that one year.
Uh,
I think he was the first big player that I went after when I was personally buying the cards. Like 89 with Griffey, my parents were buying him. Even 94 with A-Rod, it was still my parents. By 97, I just got my first job. My dad got me on part-time at the bakery he worked at, and my allowance went to baseball cards.
That's awesome.
Like that card did not come out of any of the packs I bought. Like I bought that one on eBay years later, but those were the cards I was chasing.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, I mean Jose Cruz. I've got a memory. My dad recorded the first game for me that year, 97, and he ended up homering in that game before he got traded. So that was pretty cool.
nice.
What else you got there, bud? Anything else?
I always got more. I love this card.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to show that. For the viewers or for the listeners, can you explain what that is?
It is 96 Pinnacle Skylines. It's a wonderfully clear acetate card with kind of a little hollow foil at the top, which my camera does not pick up. But
love that card.
I love it. One, it's the city of Seattle. Like the skyline is beautiful with the Space Needle. Griffey looks awesome with the backwards hat. It's just kind of iconic. And
That's right.
Can I show off?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go for it, man.
The Gold Heritage Felix.
Oof.
Nice.
And I kind of gravitate towards Felix, similar reasons that I gravitated towards Griffey. One, they were obviously hugely hyped. But you see he's got the smile. Like he just looks like he's having so much fun out there.
He just struck out Adrian Beltre is probably what happened.
Heck yeah.
Like I don't know what it is. Like there are so many guys that you watch them play and maybe they're great and they just look like it's a job to them. And then you get the ones that they look like they would do it for free. And obviously they're probably not going to, but the ones that look like they would do it for free, like there's just something about them.
Griffey and Felix, I think you nailed it. Those are the two guys to me that look like they are always having fun because they're so talented that they're just out there in a sandlot game, more or less, with their buddies and dominating.
That was my last game. Felix's last game.
Oh, you did go to
you
that.
went to that.
Okay, good.
I forgot about that one.
Were you in K-Town or
That
whatever?
was actually it's the second time I've ever bought tickets there. It was the only time I ever sat in King's Court.
King's Court.
The first time we went to King's Court, I think my daughter just didn't want to do it or something, and we ended up just kind of putzing around the stadium. And
right, that's
terrible
awesome.
seats, by the way. Like it's so much fun, but if you want to watch the game, that was the worst seat in the house.
Was it really?
You can't see anything. Everybody's standing in front of you.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. Wow, that must have been really fun to be at. I was at Randy Johnson's last Mariner game, believe it or not, but it was a lot less ceremonious than the one you were at, because Randy was ready to get the heck out of there, and he pitched, and he was about to be traded, and he destroyed the team that he played. I'll have to go look and see what team it is. I don't remember. I think it might have been Minnesota, and Chuck Knobloch might have hit a home run, and that was all that happened that game. He was dominant that game. So
if I remember right, didn't Randy want to stay, and he was basically pissed that the Mariners wouldn't give him the contract? Like they didn't want to show him the security, and he was like, "Dude, either show me that you're going to be there for me, or get me out of here."
Right.
Him leaving, that still it doesn't make any sense because they were re-upping Alex's contract. Well, they had already done that, right? Because they re-upped him in 98, I want to say, or 97 for 4 years. So it would be 97 till 01, or excuse me, till 2000. And I don't know if they're in 96 or 97 that Randy was wanting the same thing, and they're like, nah, which doesn't make any sense.
He had some back issues at the time.
Well, in 96, he barely even pitched. Yeah, but he
Right.
certainly was fine.
He was great in 97.
Yeah, Lord. Well, to show, I mean, I don't think I've shown. I've tried to grab a few A-Rods I haven't shown. For me, I grabbed cards that when I saw the base sets of these, I went after them like crazy. Like having the base Joey Cora or A-Rod or Griffey of these cards were just amazing for me. So going into, there was this card shop in, there was one in Federal Way where my dad lived. We used to go, and there was this elderly woman in there. She was so nice. She always had the Joey Coras ready for me when I went in there. It was great. But there was another one in Lake Stevens, and then there was also another one in, oh gosh, am I going to remember? Not Snohomish. But there was one right, oh man, they still have a card shop, Mill Creek. That's it. So there was one in Mill Creek, Mill Creek Sport Cards. So there was this guy in there, younger guy, super nice to me. Always made sure to get Coras out. I remember going in all those shops, and these, a couple of these, I remember seeing the base cards and just like getting the A-Rods of these. But I'll start with the 96 Circa set, and this is the Rave, 96 Circa Rave, which when these came out, man, these things are so expensive in the Beckett. So it was just a dream to even have one, which I never did. But you can see that they're numbered out of 150 on the bottom. I've only ever seen one of these on eBay for sale, and thankfully that's not the one I bought because it was really expensive. But I remember going to card shops and the flare always standing out. So this A-Rod, not the Legacy, this is the Legacy parallel out of 100, and this is the legit Legacy, for anybody wonders about that, because the name is in blue and that's an actual 0, not the letter O. But I remember this base card being one of my first expensive base cards of A-Rod. I think I had to pay $3 or $4 for it. This one right here. And fast forward to the next year, 99 Invincible came out, and me and my buddy Rob used to always try to pick these base cards up. You guys remember, just with like the clear-ish picture of the players. And so this is the premiere date out of 69. And so I just remember those 3 sets being some that I loved buying packs of at our Fred Meyer that we hadn't sold out, and trying to chase down as many of those specific products as I could. So yeah, I wanted to show those off, man. I know those were cards that, I mean, I could have never owned those parallels as a kid, but when I used to go into those card shops in Washington, they would always stand out to me. You know, those were a lot of fun for sure. Yeah. And then, you know, like I can show both of these at the same time. I mean, you guys remember, you think about Mariners rookies. I mean, these are where it's at, you know, the Leaf, and then of course the SP. I remember looking at Beckett and looking at those 2 cards and thinking, man, it'd be so cool to own an SP rookie, because they were $100 at the time. This was like $400 or $300. So
I always wanted that card. That and the what was the score traded one called?
I know I didn't grab that one. Yeah, the score rookie traded call up card. Yeah.
Call up, the September call up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that card's pretty crazy because you had to get the redemption. At one point, I have a Beckett from the end of 96 or almost the end of 96 when Alex was really coming into his own that year. And that card was still only $60. The Phenoms was only 80. The SP was 30. Crazy how that, you know, just rocketed up. Any other cards you guys want to show off while you're at it? I mean, you got them in front of you. I got a couple more nostalgic ones here to show off, just talking about Mariners history and how they came along.
Because I'm a sad sack grocery worker, and I am essential.
Oh, yeah, you went there.
There we go.
So those are what year are those for the listeners, Ryan?
98, I believe. 98, yeah.
98 essential credentials. We call it the pink and the yellow, but they're actually the future and the now. That set has gone completely off the wall. And you guys know, you can thank the basketball market for that one.
Right.
Unbelievable, man. You could go get that A-Rod for less than $100 a few years back. If that thing ever comes up, it's going to be a frenzy. I can't even imagine what that would be like. How about you, Brent? You got any other Edgars you want to show off?
Yeah, you know, a couple that I really like is, speaking of Pacific, is the 99 Revolution. Ooh. So I really like the color. So this is actually the hold on a second. This is the Shadow series. So it's going to be kind of embossed right here in a square. This is out of 99. So this is the Shadow series. There we go. Sorry about that. And then the premiere date, same card, but premiere date. This is numbered out of 49. I just really like the looks of these cards. These are one of the first couple cards that I got once I dived into the world of the 90s inserts. And the 99 Revolution cards were just, I love them. Look at them every day, man. So they're beautiful cards. So.
If I remember when you called me up, I said to those were, for me, those are two of my favorite parallels ever. I mean, Ryan, I want to go to you just real quick. When the 90s were hot and heavy and it was all about Griffey, right? Mariners, did people even like those cards that much? I mean, were they selling well when you would go to card shops? Like, did Pacific even have like a blip on the radar back then?
The only thing I remember Pacific for was the Kramer's Choice.
You're talking about this one right here. Yes, I'm going to have my kill somebody who comes into my house case, but I know it can't even focus. Yeah, so those. I mean, you remember seeing those in cases?
I never saw one in person as a kid. I saw it in the pages of Beckett. Like, I'm sure there were probably other ones at the time that were kind of big, but that's the only one I remember seeing.
That's awesome. Well, the Griffey was a big time deal in 90 because the 96 Griffey was the first set that Kramer's Choice had, and I remember seeing that in Beckett a lot. That and Cal Ripken. I remember Beckett writing about it in the back pages. You'd read about it, and there was a whole article about those inserts and how they were so different than anything that had ever come out. Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you got those, Brent. I love those cards. I have my two on my Pacific shelf, on my bookshelf. Those two are right front and center. So
cool.
Good. I think I was literally sitting in my bed because I was what I thought. I mean, I don't know what I had, but I was sick. I'm like, nope, I want to talk baseball cards. I'm going to forget about it. And I remember turning to my left. I'm like, those are the first two that I looked at and said, Brent, you should get this and this.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Awesome.
And I did. Love them.
I'm curious too, because Ryan, you were collecting at this point. Do you remember when the game used cards really started becoming a thing and they were still really expensive? Do you remember when they first started coming onto the scene in 97, 98?
97 was the one that had Griffey and Ray Ordonez, and there was one other. Was it Tony Gwynn?
I thought Tony Gwynn and Jay Buhner. I thought there were four, right? Jay didn't make it in that set. Okay. So it was just three.
Three.
Okay, three. Got it.
I could be wrong. But
no, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, do you remember ever seeing those, or was it all just like in the Beckett, basically?
Oh no, I didn't. So the one gap that I really had in collecting was from about 2001 until I got back into it mid 06 or early 06. So I mean, they had started to come out when I was kind of coming to the end of my original collecting days, but I never saw one. And then when I came back, it was my first experience. I bought a few boxes of SPX.
Oh,
got the like those were the first ones I ever saw in person.
Okay. Well, it is funny to think that, you know, back in card cases, if you went into card shops, you would see like the 98 version in a case, and these were, you know, $200-$300 cards when they first came out, because it was such a novelty to have a game used jersey and a game used bat card. I mean, there's nothing fancy about these, but when I see those two cards, I have them front and center on my game use shelf, because I feel like this is where it all started, you know, and it's amazing to see how the market's so overflooded with those that people, I mean, literally, I think I got this for $6 and a lot of other game used. I mean, it's just, to me, it's worth way more than that, but you know, it's overshadowed. I mean, they were 1 in 1,500 packs. I mean, or excuse me, 1 in 2,500 packs. So they were impossible to find, and now they're cheap. I just don't understand it. But cool nostalgic card to have. Hey, look at that. There's Jay Buhner. Nice, awesome.
Nice.
Did Edgar have any of those? Brent, have you been able to dig up any Edgar game used cards from the 90s?
I couldn't find any. I mean, usually for him, I mean, that I know of, his game use didn't start till the early 2000s. So I have a couple from 02, 03 is about the earliest that I have.
Right.
I know the ones that you just showed he didn't have in that set.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they really, again, because they would probably just pick 1 or 2 players from the big stars. They wanted to get the Griffeys, the A-Rods, Chipper Jones, Barry Bonds, and you know, Juan Gonzalez, all those guys that were putting up ridiculous numbers. Mo Vaughn, I mean, all of them had, and Nomar had all the cards in those sets, unfortunately. So Edgar kind of got overlooked when it came to some of those. But Yeah, I think, I think it's crazy to think and look back on the 90s and see the cards that were worth a lot back then and the cards that are worth nothing now comparatively. A lot of the Pacific cards still fly right under the radar, which really surprises me. But then the cards that, like, you go back and look in Beckett and see how much a PMG was back then and how much they are now. Like, what on earth happened, man? I mean, for you, Ryan, are there any cards that you see how much they're going for now and you think to yourself, like, man, I didn't see that coming. I remember when those came out, like, or maybe you've had them for years and you never thought they would, like the Essential Credentials. Did you have to pay that much for your Buners that you own?
I picked one of them up recently and I paid more than I wanted to. The other one I've had for quite a while. And it was the Now or Future, whichever one has the lower print run. That was the one I picked up. It had been in my watch list for it was probably in there for like a year at least. And I finally was just like, got to do it. I gotta have it.
Well, I mean, the value on those, I mean, are you surprised at how those have taken off? I mean, because when you picked up that first one, it couldn't have been more than like 20 or 30 bucks.
Yeah, it's probably about $30. Like I don't know if it's because they were the insert sets that they were kind of lower numbered that I just never saw. But like I look at the prices now and most of these cards I never knew about as a kid. Because like I said, I mean, my budget wasn't that great. So when I was mid 90s, like Collector's Choice Gold was the pinnacle, no pun intended, of awesome cards. Like those were the ones I'd be like, I gotta get this card.
Right.
And now it's like, yeah, I got that card. It's cool. It's really nostalgic, but
yeah, you're right. They don't carry the same weight as the ones that, but a part of it too is I think we're all, I mean, Brent, you'll probably agree with me on this, even though you've been in the group for only a few months. And I think Ryan, we got you into the group right around when Brent came in, right? Because you'd been on that YouTube page, YouTube junkie. So, I mean, are you guys influenced a little bit by the group and all the cards that they're posting? I mean, that has to have an impact on when you get a card and you're like, whoa, when you see it for the first time.
Right. Definitely. I mean, for me, like, half of it is like, okay, not only is that cool, but oh, cool, that exists, So I'm like, okay, so then you look and see, is my guy in it? Half the time he is, half the time he isn't. But I just love it, like we said earlier. I just love what was able to be done in the 90s because I wasn't even aware of it, right? And I'm like, geez, there's some gorgeous, gorgeous cards, and I'm like, I gotta get me one of those, right? So, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. I have to ask about the Skylines again. I'm going to come back to that. I mean, that card is a card that really, if you look at Beckett, was not priced very high because they were one out of every 40 or 60 packs of the jumbo packs. Like we call them magazine packs, but it was one out of 60. And I actually pulled an Albert Bell from a 7-Eleven because they had the big magazine packs there. You had to have bought that card long ago, right? Like in the mid 2000s. So
I had that one in the late 90s. I think.
Wow. And how much, I mean, do you remember what it was back then? Was it $50, $100?
I don't even think it was that much.
Wow. That set is, again, I think it's all about popularity now. The price, there is no Beckett type pricing for 90s right now. You couldn't possibly make one because it's all over the place. But a Griffey now, I mean, you're having to pay upwards of $200 or more to get a Skylines card. Whereas you could have got one for, $50 or less than 20 years ago. It's wild, man.
That's why Buhner is kind of like, Griffey's still my main PC. That's my guy. But like Buhner and Felix are kind of like right there. But that's kind of the reason why he's kind of taken the main focal point of my collecting the last couple years, because I can pick these cards up at an affordable price. Whereas like, I'm not mortgaging my house again. Like taking a second mortgage out to get an Essential Credential Griffey. Like,
oh man,
I love it. But
right, yeah, that's a good point. We talked about that on many episodes ago about starting a side PC, and after that episode, man, I went all in on my Ankeel cards, and it's been really fun to pick up cards of him that A-Rod would cost me a lot more. I mean, some of those specific rare inserts and and some of those parallels. And then I'm able to dabble in the early 2000s. That's what's really fun with him. But all right, well, let's wrap up our episode with, we don't even have a name for the segment. What have you picked up lately? We'll call it. We'll let you go first here, Brent. What is the Edgar or two that you've picked up recently that you'd like to show off to the viewers here?
So this is technically not a 90s. This is 2003 Donruss. And this is the one of his earlier relic cards. And I like it just because of the Mariners patch and the rainbow foil. So just got this a couple of days ago. This is numbered out of 25.
The Easter count.
So big fan of that. And then really going, to modern cards, but a throwback to 1987. Yeah, is the Edgar Martinez. I love Donruss in 2020 doing a throwback, and this is a out of 25 relic card of him. So a couple of relics that I was able to pick up recently that I'm really happy about. So again, he doesn't have a lot of the late 90s stuff that you guys are showing, but like Ryan said earlier, the last few years, man, relics and autographs for Edgar are just blowing up.
Right.
I know Tribute just came out, I think, yesterday, and I think Edgar's got 3 or 4 different cards just in Tribute alone with relic and autographs, and I think he shares one with Griffey. So a lot of options out there, but trying to get those early 2000s stuff of him has been really cool. So
definitely. Yeah, I noticed A-Rod was in that set, but he just has a base card. I was like, at least have an auto or something.
I saw that. I was going to show that to you. Yeah.
And Alex has lately they've been doing all Mariner stuff. Topps has, which is really interesting. I think that they're going back to that, but I think that's because a lot of their relics and bat pieces, or like jerseys and bat pieces they have left in stock, are all Mariner stuff. So cool with that. I haven't really picked a whole lot up with the nut common stuff, but it is fun that our players are still being represented. Of course, Griffey will be in everything. But what about you, Ryan? Have you got anything in recently that you wanted to show off?
I got a couple. I think I showed this in the group a few days ago. I think it's the Platinum. It's the 1-of-1 little pack card from 05 Legendary Cuts. And then I got this one. I've been reluctant to buy it for a long time, and it wasn't a super expensive pickup, but it was the last of the diamond producers I need.
Nice.
When you say the last that you needed, you have the whole set?
No. The Griffey's. Okay.
No,
not the whole set.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
These I've had for a while. It's just 99. This one I picked up for like $10 long time ago. But just for whatever reason, I never picked up the, I think it's 98 is the one I just picked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you probably had to pay a couple dollars more than you paid for the 99 version.
Yeah, it's got like a little, I don't know how well you can see, but the foil up on the top is a little dinged up.
They chip really easy. We were looking up, Greg and I were looking up, there's no PSA 10s. I think there's only 4 PSA 10s and 2 of them are Griffey. So they're really, really hard to grade for sure.
Like that card is bananas though. It's got like the felt, it's got the foil, it's got the rub.
Yeah.
I saw that card. It's one of the ones, a picture doesn't do it justice, man. Like you see it and you're like, all right, looks cool. And you get it in your hand and you're like, wow, that's like, how the hell did they do that? Why?
Right?
Well, that's why we had Jean on the episode. I think when we have her on again, we're going to dive more into the Fleer Ultra inserts because there's so many unique designs on there. And I brought up all the diamond producers at the end of that interview, if y'all remember, because I was just curious, like, how did you do this? And I love how nonchalant she was like, well, yeah, we got this felt stuff, and then we needed to layer it and then printed it and cut it. I was like, man, what I would do to be sitting there while those cards were being designed and watch them get printed would have been awesome. Well, I'm trying to reveal enough sunlight to shine, to really get the next card to shine, but I think it's going to be, oh, there we go. That'll help. All right, so the first one I'm going to show off, we talked in our 90s group, a lot of times we find these variations, or as Ryan liked to point out, a rare variation of a card. Oh boy,
a quality control variation.
Yeah, quality control variation. So and this is the All or Nothing gold. Let's see if I can get it. So this is going to work perfect for the next card. It doesn't look as gold here, but I promise if I were to show you them side by side, the foil on here is very, very, very gold, which is funny because on the back, look how bronze that is. So that's supposed to match the front color. And this, and you can see the difference now, is very, very gold. And Gene just said it was the end of the roll of foil, and it just had kind of a goldish color to it. So in my mind, this is rare in the sense that there's probably not many of them out there. I've never seen a gold A-Rod for auction, and somebody else was bidding up like crazy on this thing with me. So they must have known what the heck it was. But every now and then, like right now with the market, these cards are popping up that I haven't seen of A-Rod in forever, on the open market. And I'm sure you're seeing that with Edgar. You're seeing, Griffey always has cards up, but maybe with Buhner, you're seeing inserts and variations that people have just been holding on to. And unfortunately, with us being stuck at home, either people are bored and they want to list cards or they need money. And so this card popped up and it's got a really cool story behind it. So I'm gonna show the card first. This is from 99 Skybox. This is the rubies. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus in on it. And you can see that shine that it has on it. It's absolutely filthy. And another Gene Arena card. She told me, I sent this to her in an Instagram message. I said, look what I picked up. And her reaction was great. She was like, oh yeah, nice pickup. She's been sent these cards many times. Like, oh yeah, whatever, thanks for showing me love. But apparently, as long as the guy on eBay is telling the truth, and he was a pretty stand-up guy. He was a 17-year-old kid that sold this last week to me. He was at a flea market digging through like a dollar box or, just like a random box of cards thrown out there. That card is sitting in a top loader, or excuse me, a screw down. It's sitting in a screw down, just sitting in the box. And so he buys it for super cheap, brings it home, and then throws it in his own box. Like, oh yeah, these are cool cards. Cause he said he was just grabbing cards at flea markets that he liked. And he ended up throwing it up on eBay for, I think it was $50 or best offer, right? Like $50 first bid. And he got a bunch of offers. And I threw in a couple low ones thinking maybe he doesn't know what he has. And anyway, long story short, he relisted it. And I built up a little bit of a relationship with him and told him how much I would love to have that card in my collection. And I was able to come to a deal. But the coolest thing for me is it really confirms the whole cards like this that are numbered out of 50 or less, cards like that are iconic 90s cards, are probably floating around in boxes like that still. I'm sure you both would agree with me. There's got to be, maybe not Griffey, but there's got to be Buhners and Edgars and A-Rods that are just sitting in people's basements or just sitting in a box somewhere that hopefully will be unearthed one day. But I still think there's a lot of unknowledgeable people out there that just don't know how rare these cards are. Even he told me, he's like, I have no idea what the heck this thing is. And so, it was just really interesting to hear that. So, wow,
that's awesome, dude. It's a huge pickup.
I was pretty stoked about it. I've been looking at it every morning when I wake up. It's one of those that you just are mesmerized by, but I think it's so super cool to have a connection with somebody who designed it and ask, what was it like making these? And I even asked, why do they chip so easy on the edge? Because you have a Jay Buhner, Ryan, and yours is in pristine condition. It's one of the best copies of that parallel I've ever seen. And there's no chipping on your card, right?
Not that I've noticed.
Do you have one there? Thanks for not stealing my thunder, because if you would have shown that right before this, that would have been perfect. Awesome. Is he signing autographs there in that card?
He is. Or he's taking somebody's hot dog or something. I don't know.
That is awesome.
Given Jay Buhner, either one is possible.
Right.
Can we see do you have the 2000 version there, Brent? Your Edgar, did you bring that out?
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah, so she basically said, oh, you got to go real quick? Yeah.
So I was ending to the dog.
Oh, okay, no problem. So Brent, she was saying that the foil on these just peeled a lot easier because of the amount of, I guess, how did she say it? The type of foil to make it shine like this was a very sensitive foil. And of course they had to make replacement cards of those, which I'm surprised those aren't on the open market. Oh, look at this. Bill, what's up, Bill? Bill said that he busted his Star Rubies from a Mint Mine BGS. That's a good idea, Bill. All right, so let's see the difference between the 99 and the 2000. It's gonna be hard to show off.
I know.
Would you agree that's one of the hardest cards to get to show off correctly in your collection?
Yes, absolutely right. Because until you have it in hand and the light hits it just right, it looks like it's just raining stars if the light hits it just right, but just doesn't do it justice, right? So
right.
Trying to get it to show it, but it's in hand, it's just mesmerizing. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Absolutely right.
Well, and you can tell though, as Jean was telling me, Jean stopped doing cards in 99, so she didn't do any of the 2000 designs.
Interesting. Okay.
And so again, we like to play the what if, and what if Jean would have helped design that set if it would have been a bit more, a standoutish, but still an amazing card, dude. That's awesome. I'm really glad you were able to pick that up, because cards numbered to 50 or less from 2099, 97, 98, very, very tough. And the market's only going up. But well, guys, I thought I enjoyed talking Mariners. We don't get to talk Mariners a lot on here, just Mariners. And I think for me, collecting is all about stories. And I think anybody that watches this episode, if they're a Mariner fan, will have that like, oh yeah, I remember that. Or yeah, I remember when that happened. Like the Bosio no-hitter, I forgot to say, Omar Vizquel sticks out in my mind. I mean, running so hard,
right?
He barehanded, his hat came off, and he threw him out at first. Like it was just an amazing play. That was the year they got the new uniforms too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the first
93. Yep.
So, and then of course, Ryan telling his stories about, going to Oakland and in the Joey Cora jersey and going to Felix's games. I mean, I have a lot of good memories to fall back on. Cameron's 4 home run game. I remember when watching that live on TV. Ichiro breaking the hit record. I remember I was at work and I was following it on MLB.com, and just there's so many great memories of Mariners. I just hope that we can meet again in like 3 years on this podcast, if it's still going, hopefully, and talk about us winning the World Series. That I will guarantee that if all of us are alive, A, and B, they win the World Series, I don't care how many years, we have to rehash this episode and talk about what that's like, because we deserve that after all these years of pain and suffering.
If that happens, we got to have an on location from Safeco. I don't care if it's T-Mobile, it's Safeco.
It's always Safeco.
Stupid.
On location from the World Series.
That would be probably the most epic podcast ever. Or like do one in a hotel room and then go straight to the game afterwards, and then do a recap coming back after we're like at 1 a.m. after celebrating all night. Maybe not a good idea, but yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I really hope they do. I mean, any of you that are watching that are Mariners fans who know the Mariners, we're like the running joke of sports. We have the longest playoff drought in sports right now, don't we? Of any team, any professional team, right?
Yeah, any sport. Yeah,
any sport. We win 116 games, and then Oakland goes and goes on that streak. And we had a great season winning wise that year. The AL West was stacked in 2000. Was it 2003 or 2002 that they won? That the A's had that 20-game winning streak. I can't remember what year that was.
Was it 01 or 02? I don't remember if it was the same year as the Mariners.
It was 02. It was 02.
Because
Giambi was in Oakland in 01 and he left after that. So,
that's right.
And so did Damon. But yeah, we had an amazing season that year. We really did. I mean, we had 90 something wins, and we still didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
And because we had Oakland and another team, the Angels, I think they were all really good that year. And we got so close. A couple of years back when Cano came over, I remember when they just went on a terrible losing streak at the end of the year and blew it. And it's just the fact that we spent all that money on Cano and never made the playoffs is really going to irk me for a long time. But I think there's a little bit of hope. We're not going to say who, but we've got some prospects. Cross your fingers that are hopefully going to lead us to the promised land one of these days. And now that, Houston will never be allowed to cheat again, had to get that in there.
Let's find a way.
Sheesh. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
I'm an Astro fan.
Right. Yeah. Where's it? Anybody got a trash can in here to bang on real quick? But well, I mean, hopefully for you, Brent, hopefully you continue to find joy in discovering these cards for the first time. And are you still having that feeling too, when you see them for the first time and you're just like, whoa,
Yes, I really do. I mean, it's, seeing them either on Facebook or online, but having them in hand, it's just like, I kind of did similar to you. I have a place in my office now where I have the light shining down on it, click the light, and I'm just like, you know what I mean? And you can tilt them just at the right angle with the holders, right? So it picks up that light, and it's good stuff, man. It's good stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm a big advocate for displaying cards. I mean, I think it's super important. Ryan, you were talking a little bit about entertaining that idea one day, right? And getting some of the cards out.
I haven't yet.
We're going to have to get an exclusive when that happens. That'll be great.
I'm not ignoring. I have an auction that ends here in a minute.
Well, we might have a live reaction, good or bad, from Ryan. So we'll stay live until that ends, and then we'll either end on a sour note or end on a really good note.
All right. I got like 5 minutes. I set my alarm.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe not stay live that long.
It's nothing crazy.
Let's see. From that, I see a Jay Buhner Studio Gold press proof. Am I right?
Yep.
Awesome. Oh, nice.
I'm currently watching it for 99 cents.
Well, everybody's headed to eBay right now. Whoops, shouldn't have done that. No. But all right, guys. Well, hey,
$200.
Yeah, I know, right? Shill bidding. I want to say thank you to everybody that joined live. We had a few viewers in here today. That was great. Thanks for sticking around. I know some people were leaving because they're like couldn't handle the sadness of talking about the Mariners. I don't blame them. But thank you for everybody that came in and watched. And thank you to Brent and Ryan. Thank you guys for coming in and just chatting Mariners for a while. It was nice to rehash some of those memories and talk about some of those cards that, we definitely didn't think we were going to own growing up, or then Brent discovering them for the first time. So That's been great, guys. Thanks, Brent, again for coming on here. For everybody wanting to know, Brent, can you tell them a little bit about your YouTube channel and how that's been going?
Sure. My YouTube channel is NearMintMusings, and it's really eclectic. A lot of Minnesota Twins, a lot of Mariners. I do some videos on some 1910, 1911 O-Box that are Northwest League tobacco cards. So some Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane cards. Been collecting those as well, but pretty random and eclectic channel. So I've only been doing it for a few months, since October. So
Right.
Appreciate it.
I have to say I've stolen one of your ideas, so I got to give you credit. I love how you, depending on the theme of the video, have music playing in the background that goes with that. Like with you just got done opening like some 80s packs or early 90s Skybox basketball card packs, and you had some 90s music going on in the background. You always theme your videos with music, so thank you for doing that. I think it's really unique, and you do a really good job of storytelling in your episodes on YouTube, on your videos on YouTube. And so, of course, I always get excited when I see Edgar PC videos, and so excited to see more of those. And then Ryan, can you tell a little bit about your channel? I don't know if I gave you the chance last time, but talk about your channel and what kind of content you have on there.
Obviously, sorry. Mariner centric. I like to compare cards. I think that kind of interests me. I have several videos like that where I kind of look at an insert that's recurring from one year to the next and see where those go. And I like to do just weird things that kind of entertain me that I know 99% of people are just going to look at and be like, why? And I don't know why. There's like stupid things entertain me, and knowing that most people are not entertained by it somehow makes it more entertaining to me.
Yeah. I will have to say the book Upside Down, yet you were reading the book. Don't know how you accomplished that. Either you had it memorized or something. And then to be like, oh, hello, like right straight out of like some crazy episode on TV, like
it
was great. And for people that are watching, Ryan does a really good job. His breakdown of the elite inserts is probably my favorite video you've done. It was very educational. I learned a little bit about it. And Ryan is also very, how can I say this? He's very straightforward and blunt. And he'll be like, why would you make this car? Nobody would want to collect it, but he's right. I mean, he says it, and it needs to be said. So you definitely deserve more viewers. Both of you guys do. I think you provide unique content, and hopefully some people can go check it out. So, all right, guys, well, we're gonna sign off here. Thanks for everybody for watching again, and have a great rest of your weekend. I hope everybody's being safe, and happy collecting, everybody. Take care.
All right.
Having us.